love creative solutions to addressing the climate crisis. And today we're going to hear about a documentary about people on the ground doing the real work. Storytelling is critical, and we love when people find local folks around the country doing extraordinary work one day at a time. So today we're going to hear from one of the producers of this new documentary and maybe be inspired to think a little bit differently about it. We'll also get and give some career advice as we do in every episode. So pop in your earbuds or turn up your speakerphone, grab your notepad and pen or tablet to take notes, and let's get started. Welcome to Electric Ladies Podcast. We bring you insights and tips from remarkably innovative women about corporate responsibility, energy, sustainability, and climate-related issues. I'm your host, Joan Michelson. We talk about innovation, leadership, technologies, and careers, always bringing a new perspective. Find us anywhere you like to listen to podcasts on our website, electricladiespodcast.com, and through any of my articles as well. And please give us a 5-star review if you're so inclined. It helps other people find us. Carbon markets. Okay, I bet your eyes glaze over when you hear those words, but we've covered carbon markets a bit on Electric Ladies Podcast, and we know it's complicated. But today we're taking a really different approach. We're talking to a woman who is helping other people understand carbon markets by telling the stories of people on the ground that are doing very cool work. It's a documentary called Voices from the Ground Up by our guests today. So let's dive in. I'd like you to meet Stacey Solie, who worked with her colleagues, director, photographer Christian Banfield and Patrick Neese, to produce the film. Their website says it's an organization called Beyond Alliance that supported it, so we'll find out about them too. Stacey is a writer, director, producer, and part-time journalist, I think, as well, who specializes in storytelling. She's the founder and CEO of Strategic Storycraft, whose work has appeared in the New York Times, the Daily Beast, and other media. Previously, she said she, quote, spearheaded the birth of science communications at the Nature Conservancy, unquote. Boy, I'd love to hear about that. Including leading science writing workshops and classes, so she knows from when she speaks. She also works as a journalist, as I mentioned, and has done communications work with Stanford University. And that's great. Oh, okay. I'm curious about that too. She earned a bachelor's degree in comparative literature from the University of Washington and a Master of Science degree in journalism from Columbia University. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Stacey Solie to Electric Ladies Podcast. Welcome, Stacey, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Joan. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you. So came to tell the stories and from the ground up. How does this start?
This started with just conversations that I was having with people who work in carbon markets, and a lot of times a lot of them work for the tech sector, and it's kind of interesting that those big companies often have sort of a branch of the company that's responsible for their sustainability, and that because those are not a profit-making branch, they almost operate as their own NGO within a larger company. And there was just a lot of frustration that this pretty important tool, which is to use the carbon markets to offset emissions, and that's been calculated to be important. Like, we can't reach our climate goals without that tool. It's not the only tool. It shouldn't be the only tool. And I'm always being inundated with the message, like, companies need to be reducing their emissions. It can't just be about offsets. But there was a lot of criticism of the offset market, and a lot of frustration that it almost seemed like a campaign being used especially to discredit the nature-based solutions. And So I got connected with Beyond Alliance, which is kind of operates as a nonprofit, and there's an NGO called We Mean Business that runs that. And I was tasked with um, just doing an assessment, looking at all the media, and coming up with a recommendation. Um, if we could do anything to try to point out what's good about carbon markets, like Stacey, what would you do? You know, how would you do it? So I did that assessment, and it was not rocket science. When I went and looked at the stories that were out there and the stories that were being told, there are a lot of stories about poorly run projects, maybe dishonest in bad faith projects. But I was hearing from friends and colleagues that like, no, there's a lot of really amazing projects, and I was like, okay, well, where are they? And I was told, well, everyone's being kind of quiet right now because they're afraid that if there's a flaw in the project, it will be completely discredited, and so no one wants to talk about the good projects. So I was like, okay, this isn't that hard. Like if you want to have, I don't know about changing the narrative because the flood of information is so powerful. It's not like you can control that, but at least you need to put out the good stories so that people have a way to find out about that. If you don't tell your stories, then no one will ever know. And it's journalists tend to really like negative stories. So that's what is going to rise to the top. So I was like, we can't really compete with that. But if you even look at the negative stories, they usually have a villain. It's personified by people. And I was like, you know, what I'm looking at, the very little storytelling that's being done in this space that's positive, it's about numbers, it's about science, it's about data. So that's all really important, but it makes people's eyes glaze over, and it can be overwhelming, and most people don't even really know why they should bother to read about that. So I hope I'm not going on for too long about this, but basically I just said, I think we should tell the positive stories, and we should do it through the people so that it's not this wonky, just a UN negotiator that you envision in a big meeting, a big conference where you don't really even know what they're talking about. Let's actually just go and meet the people at all levels, from the people that are involved in the projects and organizing them, also the people that are participating in them and benefiting from them, and find out what they say. How does this change your life? Is this actually happening? Did trees actually get planted? Did this well actually get plugged? Because that was the other thing. I felt like if you just read the news, you would think that no tree was ever planted. And that's absolutely not true. So that was kind of my mission. Like, let's go out, let's meet the people, let's find out for ourselves. And I was kind of open-minded, like, well, let's see, does this approach have value? So that's how this project came to be.
That's great. And yeah, because there's real people behind it, right? I mean, it's like there's an organization is composed of humans. So I just want to back up for 1 second, and for anybody who doesn't understand, explain how a carbon market works.
Yeah. Simply put, a carbon market, the way it works is let's just take it to an individual level. All of us, like if you get on a plane ever, you're going to be creating emissions. The technology doesn't exist yet to fly without creating emissions. And so, one solution, unless you're committed to completely never flying because of emissions, if you are going to fly sometimes and you want to mitigate that impact, you can buy a carbon credit. So the way that works is that someone else is taking an action, and it costs them money to take that action, but they're taking an action that reduces the overall emissions in the atmosphere. So um, I can pay extra for a flight, and that pays this other person to do something like plant a bunch of trees. And it's just a way of incentivizing. It's a way of funding work that's good for our planet.
Okay, that's fair. And people can look it up, can Google it, or go on one of the AI tools. Just make sure you check your sources and links because they can come up with some crazy stuff. Did you actually find the people that you featured in the film? They're from across the country, different regions, very different types of people. And they're not typical people that talk about climate change at all. I mean, not even close. So how did you identify who the people that you and people like the universe of people to potentially include, and then how did you settle on these people?
Yeah, the way that I found the people that we ended up interviewing, and even if we go to the projects first, I asked the Beyond Alliance members to just suggest projects that they thought were really high integrity projects. And some of those, there were some up in Seattle, there were some up in like near in the Great Lakes area. And I did end up these three projects that we ended up choosing down in the southern part of in the Midwest. I did specifically like those projects because they weren't coastal and they were rural areas, and I just thought that was interesting and maybe unexpected. And so then I got in touch with there were three different companies and there are three different types of projects, and just asked them like, hey, if we wanted to come out and film you and put you in this documentary, are you willing, and can you act as a little bit of a fixer and introduce me to the people that you're working with on the ground? And so then we went with companies that had capacity to do that and willingness.
Well,
Um,
well, they're great characters too. I mean, they're interesting people as people, they're sort of the everyman and every woman, in the world. Let me- how are their farms doing today? I mean, it looks like they actually have been partnering on carbon markets, and to protect their farms. So, how are they doing? Is this project working for them so far? Have you checked in with them since the film? And how are their farms doing today? We relate to them, we have sympathy and empathy for them.
Yeah, well, it's a kind of a different answer for each place and each person. The Georgia project, and that's run by American Forest Foundation. That I love that project. It was, I mean, each project has its own appeal and different approach for how they go about it. But what they're doing out there is taking farms, often cattle, it could be cattle farms. And for whatever reason, that farmer's not able to run cattle anymore. A lot of them are aging out. In one case, someone has inherited the land and they're not set up to be a farmer. So, for instance, Alicia Logue is a teacher. And so she didn't feel prepared to raise raise cattle or goats. So, but she wanted to keep the land. So that was really everyone's main goal. All of the farmers, their main goal was they just want to at least keep their land in the family. And so what American Forest Foundation does is offers them a chance to um, transition to trees. And so if they agree to this program, everything's taken care of for them. So someone comes in and plants the trees for them, and they come back and check on the trees. If there's an event like a hurricane and some of the saplings get ripped out, a crew will come back in and replant, and they assess it. So I saw everyone in September, and I think I talked to a few people after that event, like in November, but I haven't been in touch since then, but I think their farms are all doing really well. But there was really interesting things about it. Like when I first heard about the Georgia project, and one of the people I was introduced to, she said, she's like, I don't like trees. And I was really shocked. I was like, what? Who wouldn't like trees? Like, what's not to like? And when I got there, I started to understand, and I heard a lot of stories of people who, like, Georgia is rich with, there are these big tall forests, and they get a lot of rain. So they have forests, and people have these memories of doing backbreaking work as children, helping their grandpa or helping their dad clear the trees to have a farm that could support the family. And so it's kind of, uh, heartbreaking to them to then plant trees. Um, so it's like that was just really interesting to hear those stories. But so that I really felt for them, and there was someone. Arjun Dur was one of every person is probably my favorite person, but Arjun goes out and he works with the farmers and finds out, how's this program working for you. And one of the things that they were talking about was silviculture, which would be a way so that like a farmer who's really attached to his cattle, maybe he doesn't have to give up every head of cattle, but could keep like a certain number and have it intermixed with the trees. And I don't think I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, because I don't think they've officially launched any program like that, but it's something they were exploring. So I also really liked that it's not just someone coming in and telling farmers, here's what you should do, because everyone's been doing that for farmers for so long. Big companies coming in and saying, you should use this seed, you should use this fertilizer, you should use these tools. So, but I think I'm rambling on. The question you asked is, how are the farms doing? I think the tree farms are doing quite well. I think in general, I learned that farmers are really struggling. And we know that kind of from headlines, but to actually talk face to face to people and hear them saying, oh, yeah, there used to be 12 dairies in this general area, and now there's one, or now there's none. So this isn't going to solve the agricultural problems, but it's a stopgap that allows farmers at least to hold on to their land.
Buy some time. Yeah, I interviewed a woman a while back that had a different solution to help farmers keep their land. It's called Solar REIT. It's an REIT, a real estate investment trust. And they, in effect, leveraged community solar, to help folks hold on to their land, putting solar panels on people's land, which I thought was really, really helpful as well. The people in the film, it's interesting because the farmers talk themselves about methane and orphan wells and things like that, and carbon markets. And it's a bit incongruous because they're not the kind of people that you expect to be talking about that. How did you decide what topics to cover? I mean, I would imagine, well, like, were you looking at solutions for the challenge of financing climate change? You said that you were exposed to this carbon markets and these farms, and how would you do it? But then you still have to decide what topics to cover, right? And did you have like a thesis going into the documentary that we want to talk about these issues, or were you just focused on those particular farms and what they were doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. We did, working closely with Christian, the director of the film, we did pre-interviews for everyone. And that was, a lot of that was just out of politeness, just to get to know them so they can know us. And so that hopefully we would have a rapport when we got there. And that was really my biggest fear, was that would that be enough time to build that relationship where they would be comfortable, like letting us on their land and showing us around and telling us their personal stories, But it was through those interviews that we explored the different topics and saw what they were interested in talking about. But yeah, I don't know. I did not have a thesis. And I think that probably if you talk to Christian in the editing process, that was really frustrating because we got a lot of material. And then, for me, it was really about just showing the human face, the different human faces and voices, literally the voices of this market saying this tool can work and it's working for me.
Right. And the real people behind these ethereal projects or this sciencey sounding project, complicated sounding project. Um, as a professional communicator and storyteller, I'm interested to get your take on how do we do this better? I mean, we need to reach more people about the climate crisis, and obviously we live in a polarized cultural moment when a lot of climate related language is kind of radioactive. So, how do you suggest we build bridges to help get real solutions to the crisis and protect people's homes and lives and businesses and communities? I mean, that's what's really at stake here, right? I don't care who you voted for or what your accent is or what part of the country you're in. Everybody is at risk
Yeah.
of either heat or wildfires or some kind of extreme weather and damage. I mean, I was just in New York City for a few days, and they, for the first time in like, can't remember. I'm a native New Yorker, so I don't remember ever seeing 20 inches of snow in Manhattan before, in one like 12-hour period. And I mean, it was crazy. I mean, the pictures are nuts, right? I mean, you can drive in the car in here and it's like, so how do we reach more people? What did you learn from maybe producing this story or other stuff you've done with strategic storycraft or your other reporting as a journalist? What do you suggest to help reach more people that might not be the normal audience that would show up for something climate-ish?
Um, I I think the way to reach more people around the climate crisis is to do more listening. And that is also what I think makes this film a little unique compared to what is out there. Because, like, you asked if we had a script, and that was by design that we didn't. I didn't want to say, oh, we want you to say these talking points. This is what we want to cover. I really wanted to hear what they had to say. And that's what makes it feel different. And that's what, if it feels real, that's why, because it was real. It's actually what people thought. And that is what cuts across what we see as these different categories or types of people or different people who voted different ways or in different economic uh, levels or different professions. Actually, if you listen to each other, a lot of those differences melt away, and you realize, like, or you go to dinner and you're like, we all have these same basic needs. We like to be together. We like to hear each other's voices. We like to eat this same food, and we want to take care of our families, and we want to be safe in our communities. So I feel like maybe what I'm saying is a little bit cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. We're not so different.
Right. So how do we use that not being so different? How do we use our communication skills to go from that understanding to sharing information about the climate crisis and things they can do to take care of themselves and to help address the challenge in a way that helps them, that serves them, that they'll hear instead of just obviously we want to listen to them, but then we need to kind of segue it into conversations like you had about carbon markets or with the American Forest Association or whoever, um, and protecting their land or whatever. So, I mean, these people listened, right? They're not the kind of, they listened to a different kind of solution. Was it just because they were, at the end of their rope and desperate for another solution? Or like, I'm just trying to get, how do we, there's a piece missing in there. I mean, it's great to listen,
Yeah.
and then we have the solution, but we have to open the space for them to have the solution, to hear the solution.
Yeah. Well, I think that everyone I encountered, I wouldn't say anyone did it out of desperation. They made choices and they made a choice that was good. They evaluated the choices available to them and made the choice that was that served their needs. And in the case of like what the company Tradewater is doing up in the Illinois, like rural Illinois, that that wasn't so much a case of holding on to land or not. It's sort of a different context. This is the project where they have just it's a kind of a rampant problem. All of these oil and gas wells that were drilled in the 90s. And you just drive around in the rural areas and you see abandoned wells, and it's a silent emitter of massive amounts of super pollutants. And maybe it doesn't affect the landowner right then, but there are stories of explosions. I mean, it's a liability. It actually, in a small scale, it's an annoyance because it's something they're driving their tractor. They have to make sure to go around it. They can damage their equipment. So there's little things like that, but then larger things like what if kids are playing? Nobody wants of course an explosion to happen. So but it was just nobody was really doing anything about it, and the landowners have memories of just these kind of fly-by-night mom and pop operations coming through when they were a kid and dealing with their parents and saying like, well, we're going to drill this well for you. You're going to get free natural gas for life. You're going to heat your home with it. You don't have to do anything. You might get a payout. It's all good for you. And then none of that was true. And the equipment has corroded, and it's just no one was dealing with it. And it's quite expensive, and it takes actually a certain amount of expertise to go in and plug and cap those wells. So Tradewater, they weren't necessarily responding to a problem. Like it wasn't like landowners were clamoring for something to be done about these wells, but they were strategic about this is a big problem. This is a huge contributor of super pollutants. Like I think is it carbon monoxide is like 80 times more potent than
Yeah, it's methane. Yeah, it's methane. Yeah.
sorry, thank you. Sorry, yes, it can have some carbon monoxide in there, but it's methane. Yeah, and it's
Methane,
much
yeah.
more potent than carbon dioxide. And so they just went around and asked people, and they sent letters and they said, "Hey, we'll do this for you for free." And so that then they would go and do it for one person, and then through that person say, do you have any friends that might be interested? So they did. Literally, the founders of the company drove around and met people face to face and then built that trust. So I don't know if that quite,
Well,
it's
it's
just one
helpful. I mean,
example.
it's a story, which is good. No, people understand. I mean, you're demonstrating what you do, telling stories, right? No, it's helpful. I mean, I think what the answer is tell a story, right? And show people instead of tell people. I want to ask you a couple other things and then get some career advice from you before I let you get back to your life. But um, how has the film been responded to? I mean, what kind of responses have you gotten to the film?
So far, we've gotten a lot of views on social media. So I think the film has over 200,000 on YouTube. And we did do a little bit of paid placement for that, but I was really shocked and really happy and excited to see that it's gotten that many views because people have to watch it for a certain amount of time. So even if they're getting it through an ad, they are sticking with it long enough for it to count. Um, but it's a little bit hard to know. It's been like I live in the Southern California out in the desert. So I think if I was in New York and going to climate meetings all the time, I might know a little bit better. But anecdotally, people were like, we really like it. People who saw it in New York at Climate Week last year said like I cried. They were like,
Oh,
there was one person that said, they said, oh, earlier today I was at a meeting and I was asked, what's the best story that you heard all week? And they said, I didn't have a story. And then they were like, now I do. And so that was really heartening. But I feel like it's maybe the legs of the impact of the film are still like it's still
yeah,
walking
for
out.
sure. Yeah, 100%. And it's short. I mean, it's only 13, 14 minutes, so it's not like people have to commit to sitting there forever. Um, and you mentioned, or I mentioned, we both mentioned the Beyond Alliance, and you said they're have a relationship with We Mean Business. How is it? Where does Beyond Alliance? Where does the money come from to produce a documentary like this? Who's the money behind it?
Yeah, the Beyond Alliance has just a lot of the big tech companies are members and they have different committees. So they work on things like improving the standards for the carbon market and how do we check the integrity, those kinds of issues. And then this film project was the kind of flagship for they had never had an active communications committee. And so this project got presented as just an option, like, hey, this could be our flagship um, communications project for this subgroup. So all of those companies contribute money. So that includes like Netflix, I think Google, Microsoft, Meta, a, a lot of the big tech companies are part of the Beyond.
Fang, as it's affectionately referred to. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, they affectionately refer to as Fang, which I think is pretty funny.
That is
The entendres are like flying off the wall on that one, right? So before I let you go, I like to give some career advice for mid-career women. So think about a woman who has at least 10, maybe 12 years of experience. She has an education. She knows what she's good at. And she wants to excel in her career and make money as well. But she also wants to make a difference and doesn't feel like there should be a trade-off. What advice would you give to her?
Gosh, I that's such a tough question. What advice I would give to a mid-career woman because I often feel a little lost myself, like I never quite know what's next. One thing that I've done is just given myself permission to explore. So, like this was the first documentary that I ever produced. And I just felt very supported in that I had a vision and I just found an amazing team of people who supported that vision. And that was honestly kind of a new life-changing experience. So, I've also, yeah, I think, I don't know. It's just going to be so different for everyone depending on where they are, what they want to do. But so I can really only speak to what's worked for me. And like in a completely different realm, I got involved in my community a few years ago. There was like a big arts grant that was offering, I got involved in the City of 29 Palms Public Arts Advisory Committee, and I oversaw and helped produce these free arts events for the people of this town. And I learned a ton of skills through doing that I then applied to making this film. So there's also that kind of sometimes saying yes to something for your community that can just oh I guess I just learned so much and I met so many people and I got exposed to really amazing artists in ways that are still playing out today. So I guess kind of being open to exploring and but like it can go the other way too, where you can say yes to too many things and get spread too thin and lose sight of your own vision. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. And by the way, I joke that I will be mid-career until I'm 6 feet under because I'm always looking for the next cool thing.
Yeah.
No, that's really helpful. And I think your creative journey has also demonstrated to follow your own inkling, right? Follow your own inclination, speak up for yourself, use what comes naturally to you in the world and just bleep and talk to people, right? I mean, I'm one of those crazy people that talks to people in the elevator, right? I mean, it's like everywhere. I've never met a stranger. So, no, I love that. And you've had such an interesting career so far, and I look forward to seeing what else you do. Any final thoughts before I let you get back to your life?
Maybe, I mean, as I was sitting here, I was like regretting that I didn't, in terms of the film, I mentioned two of the three companies, and the third one was Chestnut Carbon. So I don't know if it's too late to just, mention that
Mhm.
I also really, they're more of a corporate approach. It wasn't as much ground up, and they are buying land outright from the community, but they were also doing the piece of really getting involved in the community and listening and getting involved in the Chamber of Commerce and finding out what people needed. But what they were doing was planting mixed forests, like instead of just pine, which is in the South, what everyone plants. So they're kind of restoring these forests that don't really get planted anymore. I don't know if those were the word thing that I'm like, what did I forget to say during the main part of the interview? But I did want to just say that in terms of the film, it's just kind of just different ideas. Like there's different ways to do things. There's a lot of different kinds of people that are trying to make a difference, and they're all intersecting in really creative ways. And I think maybe we can take that model for solutions more broadly. Like, let's just get creative and um, work together and try to solve these problems.
No, I love that. And that's exactly why I started the way I did, because we need all the creative solutions we can get, right? That's so great. Thank you for that so much. And thank you for joining us today on Electric Ladies podcast. Stacey Solie of Strategic Storycraft, which by the way is a great name also. And from the film From the Ground Up. And they can find it on YouTube. Everybody can find it on YouTube.
Or you can go to the Beyond Alliance website. There's a page, and the page also gives you some background on some of the characters if you wanted to dig a little deeper.
That's great. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stacey. I appreciate it. So, how do you explain complicated climate related issues to people? What's one thing you took away from listening to this interview from Stacey's points? Tell us on Twitter or LinkedIn at Joan Michelson, and you may win a complimentary 30-minute coaching session with me. I've met wonderful people that way. And please let me know you're a listener. And please also subscribe to our mailing list to stay abreast of our talented, amazing guests like Stacey, our articles and career advice, and special offers as well. And you can subscribe on our website, electricladiespodcast.com, and tell us what you do or don't like about the show. We are listening and want your feedback. I'm Joan Michelson. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.